Okay, so yes, I am Andrew Savory, and I've spent the last few years prior to New Relic running around talking about what makes an amazing customer experience. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how New Relic can really help to deliver those great customer experiences. New Relic is obviously a company with headquarters in San Francisco, and we have a fantastic team out there, including some amazing marketing folks who gave me a little bit of assistance with this title. So I want to bring things a little bit back to the UK kind of focus and bring it down to sort of more the natural level. And apologies to my marketing colleagues. So what we're going to be talking about today is not creating an awesome customer experience. We're going to talk about creating a not bad, thanks, customer experience. And how about a nice cup of tea while we're at it as well? So, seriously though, I'm going to talk about a methodology to consistently improve your customer experience. And for the technical folk in the audience, the good news is we're going to see some hands-on demo and some real product. So I've just got about 45, 50 slides to get through before we do that, but we'll get there. So we are in the age of digital transformation. And as you've heard throughout the course of today, every business pretty much now is a software business in some way. And every business is trying to engage with their customers online. And digital is really changing the way that we're doing business. We've got hotel companies that have no hotels. We've got taxi companies that have no taxis. Software is driving the world. So much so that we've got newspapers now that are writing articles on what actually is digital transformation and how you should go about doing it. We've even got management schools who are researching digital transformation and telling us what their findings are and how we should be doing these sorts of things. It even goes beyond this. We've got meetings of incredibly rich people who are talking about winning at digital transformation. So at Davos just a few days or weeks ago, they were talking about this new industrial revolution that's being driven by digital and how we're at the start of a fundamental shift. Such a fundamental shift, in fact, that we've even got governments doing it and governments completing it. A great example is the UK government, who have set up a number of exemplars of how to do digital transformation and completed it with a focus on customer experience. So there can't be any doubt at all that we are, in fact, in the age of customer experience as well as the age of digital transformation. We've got consumers who are more savvy than ever before, and they're engaging with brands in new ways, much more directly and usually digitally. It's now normal to see huge brands talking to their customers on Twitter. And in the John Lewis talk earlier, we saw how that data is being fed back into companies via things like New Relic. So it's no surprise, really, that digital transformation and customer experience really go hand in hand. And I love this quote from the Wall Street Journal a couple of years ago, where they say that digital transformation is actually about trying to understand how this disruptive technology really affects the customer experience. And Forbes just a year or so ago was saying that we really need to think about the millennial customers as well. These millennial customers, who are pretty much anyone that's younger than myself, are digital natives, and they really expect a great customer experience, and they expect it to be digital. That's their first best way of engaging with all of these brands. And they simply want an experience that works. And what does this mean? This means that you've got to complete your digital transformation as quickly as possible and deliver an awesome, a really quite good customer experience. It's worth saying this again. Customers now expect your company's technology to simply work. So what does that mean? How do we do this? Well, as techies, we might run in and we might start re-architecting our application stack. We might be going down the microservices route, deploying containers, single-page applications, distributed systems clusters, mobile channels, social media engagement strategies, DevOps, this week's JavaScript framework, and are we done yet? Probably not. We need to step back and think about what we're doing. What does success look like? Where are we now? And how are we going to get to where we want to be? Sherlock Holmes, as written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, said, "It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data." He also said, "Insensibly one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts." Why do you need data? Because normally we will go in and try and solve these problems based on our gut feelings, and gut feelings is no substitute for data. This time a real person, Lord Kelvin, who you may know if you're from a scientific background, said to measure is to know. I'm paraphrasing here. He actually said that when you can measure with what you're speaking about and express it in numbers, you know something about it. But when you can't measure it, when you cannot express it in numbers, your knowledge is of meagre and unsatisfactory kind. It may be the beginning of knowledge, but you can scarcely, in your thoughts, advance to the stage of science, whatever the matter may be. So what we want to talk about is what is the science of improving your customer experience. I'm going to start off with thinking about what happens when you measure. And measuring is good, but we really want to be able to go beyond that. Measuring when things break, figuring out that something's gone wrong and going and fixing it, getting data on why things went wrong, it's not as good as a preemptive, progressive, proactive software analytics approach. And that's where we're going to head to. We should be able to use the data we're capturing to iterate so that every time we're getting a little bit better. There's always going to be bottlenecks, so we want to develop a process that's going to help us iterate through and improve on our site performance and our site experiences. So how are we going to do that? We need the right tools. So, what's in our toolbox? And it's at this stage, if we were in a Marvel movie or a Batman movie, that we'd be, because we are obviously all superheroes here, we'd be strapping on the lycra bodysuits, picking up our magical hammers, picking up our crossbows and lots of guns and rushing off to save the day. But this is New Relic we're talking about here. We don't need special effects, we don't need weapons, all we need is our awesome source. So these are the things that are going to help you create an awesome experience. Number one. Browser. Pow! Browser is the reality of your user experience. It tells you exactly what's happening at the end user's level. What are they seeing? How long is a page taking to load? What errors were on that page? What was the overall experience that they saw? If you're only looking at the back end, well, I know that's kind of where the dev guys tend to live. You're probably missing about 80 to 90% of the slowdowns that your end users might be experiencing. So browser is the reality. You've got to keep an eye on it. And it can tell us what's happening, where it's happening, and what the end result looked like. And it's fantastic for contextualizing what your user experience is. It has huge value. For example, just looking at this screenshot, you can see that the sort of beigey, yellowy blob there, the DOM processing, is having a huge effect on our end user experience. But there is a catch. Browser experiences include lots of different variables, things like the end user's version of the browser they're using, the network they're on, the desktop computer or mobile device they're on, the overall network connection. So while browser can tell you a lot about the systemic issues and the reality, it's very difficult to adopt a scientific process based on the data that it's giving you. We've got a solution for that. Synthetics. Bam! In addition to being a wonderful tool for constantly validating the functionality of your website, is it up, is it running? Can your users get through the critical path? Does 1 + 1 still equal 2 on your site? Synthetics is also a fantastic controlled environment. One of my colleagues calls it a crash test dummy for your software. So we can use synthetics to set up a laboratory to collect an incredibly detailed amount of data about what your users are doing. With browser, there's always a challenge where you want your analytics to be as light, as in touch as possible, but you want to know as much as you possibly can about the end user experience. With synthetics, you have no such limitation. You can collect lots and lots of data. So you can use it to help you understand a lot more about how things are performing. You can also exclude a lot of the variables like browser version, network, and things like that. So it's very great for a scientific method to improve your site performance. But you always have to remember it is artificial. It doesn't tell you what your users are really doing. It's not the reality, so you must always go back and look what's going on in browser as well to make sure that things are improving. The last part of the solution is my personal hero, Insights. And Insights is the analytical workbench where you're going to be able to take all this data that we're capturing from browser and synthetics and slice and dice it to really understand what's going on with your site performance. It can help you to understand what you need to be working on, where you're going to get the biggest improvements, and also to track the changes as they happen. And obviously, any change that you make to the experience is going to have some cost in terms of development hours. So wouldn't it be much better if you could use Insights to inform that decision so that you can task those developers with confidence, knowing that they're going to be fixing the right things? So that's the toolkit that we're going to be using. So in summary, we're working with browser and synthetics and Insights together. That's the platform, and that's how we're going to do our user experience management. So how does this work? How do you iteratively improve the performance of your site in a measured manner? This is where the process part of it comes in. We want a repeatable methodology that can tell you what's going on with your customers, what's going on with your end user experience, and identify where you need to make changes to it. So we're going to start with browser. We're going to, because it is the reality, we need to know what's going on there. And we're going to use Insights to refine our understanding of what's going on from browser. And then we're going to use synthetics to increase the data set that we can use to understand what's going on. And we're going to feed that back into Insights to refine a little bit more. And then we're going to throw it back to browser to check that what we changed has worked. So step one, identify. We can look in browser and see exactly where we've got systemic performance issues. We can see which pages are the most important for us. We can get a target list of pages that we want to work on. And we can also, if we like, do some extra instrumentation of those pages. So, for example, if you've got a particular page that is resulting in a high amount of conversion of your customers that's critically important, you want to be able to track the value of that page by adding some extra metrics to it. Perhaps you've got a landing page that you want to drive a lot of customers to. By having the right information about that page in browser and Insights, you can identify it quickly and easily. So we're going to get the list of interesting pages from browser. We're going to just double check that data in Insights and make sure that it does correlate with what we expect and that we're going to be focusing on the correct pages. We're then going to use synthetics to test those pages that we've identified, to find out more about those pages, to capture the extra level of detail that we're not going to be getting from just looking at the end user experience. We're then going to refine the data that we're getting back from synthetics just to make sure that it does make sense, cross-reference it with what our expectations were based on the browser data. And then finally, we're going to make some sort of change to our site. Now, I'm not going to go into what your software development lifecycle might look like, but that change could be, for example, compressing some JavaScript or CSS. It could be increasing the compression on some images or changing the images you use. It could even be changing your hosting providers. Whatever the change is, you're going to make it, and you're going to be able to make it with confidence because you've proved that this is an issue. And then you're going to go back to step one, checking again in browser for the next set of pages that you want to improve. And that's our software methodology. So, the end of the PowerPoint. Let's look at what it really looks like in reality. So, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, so I can see what's going on. Okay. Brilliant. So here we are in browser, and this is where the real user experience starts. This is where we can see exactly what's going on with our users. And the first thing you'll see is that it's really small. There we go, that's better. So the first thing you'll see here is that our web application performance is pretty standard. It's not brilliant, but it's pretty standard. And we're seeing a huge amount of time that's being lost in DOM processing. So that tells me that I've got to start worrying about what we're doing in the DOM, how our pages are working, and thinking about the performance on the front end and how we can refine that. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to take a look at the page views and see what sort of effect this is having on the end user experience. And we can see that actually this particular page is very, very slow and something of a concern. And we can actually see exactly what's going on with that page. So this is good. We know that we want to probably focus on this page. And I happen to know from speaking to the business owner of this site that this London Summit is a pretty big deal. And so we want to make sure that our landing page works really, really well. We could also look at some of the session traces to see if we can find out why this particular page is running a little bit slowly. So let's see if it shows up. There we go. So let's look at this session trace and see what's going on here. And this is telling us a little bit about what happened for this particular user visiting the site at this particular time. And we can look at some of these assets and see exactly how long they took. So this one took almost 3 seconds, not good. This one took over 3 seconds as well, also not good. We've got a CSS file here that took 43 milliseconds. Now you've got to bear in mind, and we heard this a little bit earlier as well from Abner, for example, where when you're talking about a great user experience, it's got to be fast. And we know that if your page is taking more than about 3 seconds to load, you're going to start seeing users dropping off, dissatisfaction, basket abandonment, all sorts of nasty things. So if you've got an image that's taking 3 seconds to load, you've got no hope of the rest of the page loading any quicker than that. But what we can't really see here is why this particular image was slow. What we also can't see here is whether this image is a statistical outlier or if every time it loads it's running slowly. So that's where we can start gathering some more data and using insights to figure out what's going on. But so we're going to start off here by saying, all right, this is a page that's of concern to us, this London Summit page. What we want to do is now go ahead and set up a synthetics check. Well, actually, first of all, our documentation has got some fantastic information on exactly what is going on in this DOM processing. If in doubt, go and read it. I had to go and read it and find out why my page was running slowly. So in Insights, first of all, I'm just going to double check this theory that this page is genuinely slow and that we should be concerned about it. So to save you from watching me typing, I'm going to copy and paste and run a query here. How's that size? That's not good. There we go. So this is telling us which of our pages are running particularly slow in terms of DOM processing. And the first thing we note here is that actually the London Summit page is kind of, what is it, number 3, number 4? So maybe we should be prioritizing the top one. Not so fast. What we should really do here is actually look at the impact of each of these pages. So let's see how many times each of these pages are being viewed. And now you can see all of those other pages, pretty unimportant, but this London Summit page is being visited over 10,000 times. So it's pretty crucial that we start improving it. So we've used Insights to just refine what we're looking at in browser to be sure that we're targeting the right thing. So the next step, if you remember the methodology, we've gone from browser to Insights. Now we're going to go to synthetics and capture a data set that allows us to do some more scientific research on what's going on. So that's what I've done. Oh, SAS is awesome. Look at that. New version of the app. Let's refresh. Cool. So I've set up a test to look at this page, and I've told it to capture it, to look at this page from lots of different locations at a particularly high frequency, so I've got a really big data set. And remember, the more data you've got, the better it is for deriving conclusions from it. If you've got a really good data set, you can be sure that you're making the right decisions. So this check is going to run, and it's going to tell us all about that page and what's going on. So So here we can see the overview of how this page is performing, and we can go in here and look at a particular result that was very slow. And we've got a very similar view here to what we were seeing in browser. So far, so good. But what we can actually do is tell it to sort by duration, and now we're seeing the page time, the load times for all of these different things in order of how slow they were, which is kind of useful. The next thing we can start doing is looking at some of those resources. So, for example, this CSS file. We can click on here, and rather than just getting an overall duration for how long it took, we can see exactly where it spent its time. The time it spent looking to doing DNS lookups, the time it spent waiting for a connection, the time in the SSL overhead, sending the data, lots and lots of great information here to help us understand why this particular resource is running slowly or not. So what we want to do is just confirm whether or not this resource is of concern. So we can actually jump straight over to Insights here, and it's opening up in a tab behind here. And this is going to tell us all of the times that this particular resource was loaded. So that's kind of useful, but what we really want to know is how slowly it loaded. So I'm going to change this to a week ago to get a bigger data set. And I'm going to look at the duration. Actually, no, what I'm going to do is, we heard earlier from one of the speakers that averages are bad, so let's look at percentile. So, how slow is this? Now I know it's going to give us this in milliseconds, so I'm going to convert it to seconds because it's just a little bit nicer. Duration in seconds, and this is going to tell us how often, what the typical time of this asset loading was. So this is great, 0.5 seconds, 7 seconds, I'm happy with this, no work needed, this is a good asset, don't need to optimize it. And we've been able to confirm this across a pretty large number of results. So let's look for an asset that is not performing as it should be. For example, let's say this CSS file that is being suspiciously served by serve.css.php, which may or may not have some sleep statements in it to make it look good. So, same level of detail here. We can see that actually 9 seconds waiting for our web server to send this data. So this suggests there may be a problem with the web server, that perhaps we need a better web server, or perhaps a better system admin, someone better than me. But I want to confirm that this is a general trend and not a statistical outlier, so I'm going to do the same trick. I'm going to go back into Insights. I'm going to close that window and go to this one. And again, we've got the number of times that has been requested, so we can do that percentile trick. Duration, 90th percentile, divided by 1,000 as slow in seconds. That would be better if I didn't do a typo on the L. There we go. So in the last hour, and I could have increased it to the last week, it would be much the same. This resource has taken around 10 seconds to load. So if we're going for the 3-second whole page load, that is going to be a major roadblock. So this is a resource that we want to focus on and figure out how we should fix it. So this is great. We've been able to use browser to identify an important page, Insights to confirm that this page is actually seeing a lot of traffic and worth investigating, synthetics to capture lots of data about how this page, how all of the assets for that page are loading. And so now we can hand it back to the developers and say, this page needs some work. And we can do that with confidence, and we can tell them, this is one of the resources on that page that is slowing it down. They can then go and fix it, and you can then track to see whether that has changed the overall customer experience. And in this instance, I sincerely hope it would do. But there's more. So, rather than just looking at that one particular image, how about we say, well, tell us what's going on with all of the images. So then we've got, actually not slow, let's change that to duration again now. So we've got a list of images, and let's actually facet it by URL. So now we can see a list of all of the images and how long they're taking to load. And we can also see, if we wanted to, how many times we're loading them. So bearing in mind this is the synthetic checks, you can see how many times these resources have been loaded, so you can get a degree of confidence for how much of an issue each of those resources might be. So this is great. This helps us understand what to optimize. There are other things that we can do as well, though. So maybe we should be looking at how we're hosting our services. So let's actually look at duration, and I'm going to drop that column. And let's facet, instead of URL, let's facet by domain. So if you were suspecting that one of your hosting providers was particularly slow, you might want to do something like this. So here you can see that andrewsavory.com, that guy has no clue, should never be allowed near a server, but actually Bootstrap and Google APIs and things like that, they're all super fast. So move all of your content over there instead. So this is a pretty awesome way of incrementally improving the experience that we're delivering. So with that, hang on, undo that, and so that's the general principle of what we're doing. You've got to bear in mind that any analytical effort that you're engaging in is comprised of three things, really. The collection of the data, processing of that data and deriving things that you might need to take action on from that, and presentation of that data in a way that's digestible, that's understandable, and that allows you to actually action what you've been collecting and understand how to improve the experience that you're delivering. And with that, I think we're pretty much out of time. So thank you very much. If you've got any questions, then please do feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help. That's it. Thank you.